With both seasons of Mobile Suit Gundam 00 checked off the list, it's time for this series to move on to another theatrical release. While I had a couple of issues with the general storyline of 00's second season, I think that this particular alternate universe is one of the best with great animation and interesting characters. In 2010, a follow-up to the first two seasons was released in the form of a theatrical sequel that would finally wrap up all of 00's plot lines and show us the ominous dialogues that are to come. While Trailblazer is remembered most fondly for its incredible mech battles and intense soundtrack, the general feelings about its storyline and how it wraps up the themes of the 00 world are more of a mixed bag. It's no secret that Trailblazer was the first big Gundam property to incorporate aliens. Well, there was that space whale thing from Seed, but that was way too interesting for that setting, so they just didn't do anything with it. Here in Trailblazer, we finally get to see Gundams go up against extraterrestrials, and it's done in kind of the weirdest way I could have imagined. While there are some things that this movie does with the tone that I really like, at the end of the day I kind of felt a little confused during the credits. Not confused about the story or anything, but more confused in a "that is what this movie is" type of way. Wakening of the Trailblazer takes place a full 2 years after Celestial Being defeated Ribbons and the Innovators. The Federation government has reformed into a much less tyrannical entity, and while tensions between the new government and civilian corporations are still high, overall the world is enjoying a well-deserved time of peace. Ian reunites with his wife Linda, who's brought 2 brand new solar generators to be installed in the 00 Gundam Quanta. Ian remarks that the Quanta is a Gundam that Setsuna always dreamed of, and has been built specifically for the use of an Innovator pilot. I find the Quanta quite similar to the new Gundam from Char's Counterattack in a narrative sense. It's the most advanced suit of its time, taking many design philosophies from a multitude of suits that came before it. And much like the new Gundam being built specifically for a new type, the Quanta is built specifically for Innovator use. With the introduction of the brand new mobile suit, we also get a brand new song. Closed World by Japanese rock band The Back Horn opens the film for us, and much like the OPs by Overworld for the TV series, it fits the vibe really well. Something about the punk ska vibe of these songs fits with the themes and resonates with the time that these shows were made, and even though I can't play it here for copyright reasons, do yourself a favor and go give it a listen. We cut to Celestial Being's fight scene from the end of Season 1, but things are a little off. While at first I just thought the voice actors changed for some reason, this is actually a showing of Celestial Being the movie, being attended by our friend Saji Crossroad. And before the audible groan rings out because I know a lot of people don't like Saji, don't worry, he has basically nothing at all to do in this movie. Anyway, he's a little disappointed that he wasn't in the movie, which I find kind of funny. But at the same time, it's a little insensitive to make a movie about a conflict that happened like less than 2 years ago. Wow, Gundam 00, that's a really realistic depiction of modern Hollywood. Speaking of someone who has basically nothing to do in this movie, Princess Marina is up in space trying to perform an inspection of the brand new colony that is currently under construction by the Colony Corporation. A ton of the workers at the colony are migrants from the Middle East, and as explained by Marina and Shireen, they were originally taken there by the former Federation administration to be laborers. While in the time since they've worked out a deal with the Colony Corporation, Marina still wants to make sure the workers are okay and everything is up to code. Well, the corporation doesn't take too kindly to that, so they decide to just literally murder her and cover it up by telling everyone that it was an accident in space. Luckily, they're saved just in the nick of time by an old Flag mobile suit and lock on shooting a terrorist. He makes a quick exit with little explanation, and we see that Setsuna is piloting the Flag as they speed off into space. I gotta say, even though the Flag is pretty much ancient at this point when it comes to tech, GN flag model aside, it's pretty great to see the old suit get a fan service scene in the movie, because I just love that design. Celestial Being has taken it upon themselves to do peacekeeping jobs within the colonies, since the Federation seems to be having some trouble on that front. Back on board the good old Ptolemy, we meet up with the full crew from Season 2, and even though this movie is really focused on the Meisters, it is nice to see Felt, Melania, and Lassie. Sumeragi is also on board, and if there's one glaring flaw in Awakening of the Trailblazer, it's a severe lack of Sumeragi. She just doesn't have much to do, and that goes for the ship as a whole. Unlike Season 2, the movie doesn't really make the Ptolemy a focus of its combat and instead focuses on the mobile suits, which is fine, but lacks a bit of the identity that Gundam 00 had going for it. Setsuna seems pretty distant from the others on board the Ptolemy, and this is due to him becoming an innovator at the end of Season 2. While it isn't a full reversion of his character arc, he does become more closed off and more like his Season 1 self while he struggles with these changes. The Ptolemy doesn't have long to rest, as they get word that a massive spacecraft is approaching the Earth sphere from the direction of Jupiter, and for some reason Setsuna is incredibly worried about it. The guy has some psychic level anxiety. We catch back up with Caddy Monacan, now Brigadier General of the Federation military, also receiving word about this mysterious ship. They scan the ship's data and find that it's a craft called the Europa that has quite a history in the 00 series. For one, the ship belongs to Celestial Being and was launched almost 150 years prior on a research mission to Jupiter. The true mission was to create the Gundam's GN drives, and once the drives were completed and sent on their way back to Earth, one of the scientists went crazy and killed everybody, and then tried to drive the Europa directly into the planet, but failed. Later on, Alejandro Corner's family finally found the ship in an expedition, hoping to find blueprints or schematics for the GN drives. Unfortunately, all they found was the purple Haro that was utilized by the Trinities throughout both seasons. However, the information received did lead to the production of the GN drive Tau, which was used by the Trinities, and then later the Allahs through Season 2. So yeah, now that ship is headed towards Earth, and it definitely can't be good news, but without all that information, the Federation doesn't see it as a huge threat beyond the fact that it could collide with the planet or an orbital station. In the 2 years since Season 2, the Federation has been studying the Celestial Being mothership, and we see the full scope of how gigantic the deep space craft really is. There are Innovades working there to show the Federation officials the full scope of the station. We also meet a man named Descartes Shaman, a Federation captain and former Allah's soldier, who is a true innovator recognized by Veda. Descartes is kind of a prick and tells Monacan that the Federation treats him like a guinea pig. A Mobile Suit patrol fleet goes out to intercept the Europa, firing a bunch of missiles at it, but the ship is just too huge to be stopped. At this point, they're afraid of it falling onto Earth and causing untold damage, so Descartes offers to go out in his brand new mobile armor, the Gade Laza, and take care of things. The Gade Laza itself is a really great fighter design as well, and I especially like the GN drive halos behind its rear thrusters. It has the ability to use a ton of remote fangs as well as a giant laser, which Descartes uses to blow the Europa into pieces. Monacan is so impressed with the innovator's performance that she tells the guy in charge at the mothership to start treating him with the respect of a captain, to get him a nicer chair. While most of the Europa is destroyed, some of the fragments do fall to Earth. We see a journalist on the lookout for a hot scoop, observing the military around one of these fragments, when all of a sudden something goes horribly awry. Suddenly, one of the vehicles starts driving around on its own. In the former AEU, we see a car crash, but no one is inside one of the vehicles, and oh my god, this is the plot of Stephen King film Maximum Overdrive. Yeah, so I wasn't expecting this to be the plot of a piece of Gundam media, but a bunch of technology all over the world starts coming to life and attacking people. We even see one girl get stabbed by her own doorknob. Truly, nowhere is safe. To make matters even worse, the poor doorknob girl then opens her door only to have Ribbon's Allmark in a scary spacesuit walk out before the scene cuts away. What a shock. Alleluia and Marie are out in the wilderness doing whatever it is they've been doing for 2 years, and they decide to go check on a nearby power substation, only to find one of the transformers completely destroyed. It's not long before the vehicles around the power plant start chasing them around, and Alleluia has to parkour away from them. And this movie is very silly. If you ever wanted to see Alleluia get chased by a murderous cherry picker, well, it's in here. When the two find the personnel, they discover that they're all dead and impaled with this metal substance. It's pretty disturbing, actually. Eventually, Lock-On comes with his Gundam and saves the two, telling them that it's time for them to get back to work, as Sumeragi and Setsuna believe something bigger is going on behind the scenes. Billy Katagiri shows up at the Federation Space Engineering Lab, where they are studying a fragment of the metal, though they say there's nothing remarkable. They do note that when they received the shard, there was only a small amount of the metal left, and they kind of chalk it up to looters taking it, or perhaps the rest of it burning off in the atmosphere. Billy has a theory that the fragments could somehow be moving on their own, and then we're introduced to a woman named Mina, who is the horniest scientist in the world and only exists to sexually harass Billy for this entire movie. I guess the writers felt bad for friend-zoning Billy for 50 episodes. Celestial Being also decides to inspect what's happening on Earth, and they've confirmed through Veda that the metal is attacking people with high quantities of quantum brainwaves. And who else do we know that has a high amount of quantum brainwaves? That's right, Louise, who's been in the hospital for 2 years. Damn, alright. Well, Saji is visiting her when Ribbon shows up in his inconspicuous spacesuit to try and touch them. Saji doesn't like the sound of that, so he smashes Ribbons in the head with a steel chair like it's a WWE pay-per-view event. Saji and Louise run outside and are saved by the arrival of Setsuna on a cool motorcycle. He wastes no time shooting Ribbons in the face, but it has no effect. Luckily, Setsuna came prepared, and he pulls a wad of plastic explosives out of his inventory and uses it to blow Ribbons into 2 pieces. Damn, Setsuna. I really love the idea that he just brought that plastic explosive just in case. Klaus makes his one cameo in this movie as a special envoy to the Federation president. He talks to Billy, and the two discuss Doorknob Girl, who now has metal shards growing over half her body. It would seem that this metal is something the government is calling an extraterrestrial living metal shapeshifter, or ELSE for short. These beings seem attracted to people with strong quantum brainwaves, and can transmute other matter into more metal. It can also take the forms of other things that it assimilates as well. The Federation uses Veda to study the ELSEs in a hope that they can find a way to combat them. Celestial Being discusses the Ribbons look-alike that Setsuna killed and discovered that it was the body of an Innovate crew member from the Europa, taken over by the ELSE. While they are discussing this, they see an incoming ship on the radar, and it's none other than the Europa, a ship we just saw explode not too long ago. The Gundams launch to defend the Ptolemy, and we finally get some mech action about an hour into the movie. Though I'm not complaining about the sentient cars, that part was great. Setsuna launches in the 00 Gundam, though his GN drives have been replaced with particle containers due to being used in other suits. Lock-On goes back to using a repaired Gundam Dynamez from Season 1, and damn, it's great to see the original design back, although with a sleeker shield. Later on, Lock-On upgrades to the really great looking Gundam Zabanya, which has shield bits once again, that double as rifle bits this time. Once again, funnel supremacy reigns supreme. Finally, Alleluia and Marie pilot the Gundam Harute, another orange transforming suit that excels in hit-and-run tactics. Harute is based directly off the data from Gundam Arios and the GN Archer, and has a tandem cockpit. It's the most unique design that Alleluia gets to pilot during the 00 series, and it's one that I really like. Also, I really love the quad fins on the head unit. It's really unique and goes well with the tandem pilot theme. The newly appeared Europa launches these cone-like metallic fangs to attack the Ptolemy. The Gundams put up a good fight, but these enemies are unlike anything they've ever fought before. Setsuna has a hard time shaking the ELSE, and eventually their interference becomes too much for him to handle, and the quantum brainwaves cause him to go through intense pain in the cockpit. ELSE cones start colliding with the 00 Gundam and infecting its arms and legs. Things seem pretty bad for Setsuna until a brand new Gundam shows up, which is really cool because it's purple, and also it's called the Gundam Raphael, who is the best Ninja Turtle, so I gotta love it. This new Gundam blows off the 00's leg and arm, and then takes out a wave of the Else and the ship with a huge laser. Not surprisingly, the pilot is confirmed to be a revived Tieria aboard the Ptolemy. As an Innovate with full access to Veda, he can transfer his consciousness to any living terminal. The reunited Meisters discuss what they should do about the Else that are left, as the Europa was a copy created from a mass of the living metal. Lock-On wants to fight, while Alleluia says the Else might only be attacking because they lack information about humanity. All the while, Setsuna, who was the leader of the Celestial Being crew by the end of Season 2, has no idea what to do, and finds himself lost in his own thoughts. Suddenly, we see all the characters with strong quantum brainwave potential get an incredibly bad flash of pain. Ian and Linda observe the surface of Jupiter through a long-range probe, and see a huge dark spot appearing from within the planet. Jupiter's moons break apart and are sucked into the hole, and a wave of Else ships appear from within the Great Red Spot of Jupiter, and start moving towards the Earth. Felt hops on her PC and calculates that the Else fleet will arrive at Earth in 95 days, so they just have over 3 months to prepare. The Federation assembly kind of freaks out, and rightly so, because just one Else ship was enough to wreak havoc all around the Earth. While they publicly announce that the Else ship will pass by the Earth on its way to the center of the solar system, that's pretty much just a lie they tell the public so that the entire planet doesn't freak out. They send an exploration fleet to intercept the Else around Mars, and included among their numbers is Descartes. While this movie really took its time with the pacing in the first half, there are no breaks now as we speed full on towards a confrontation with this unknowable alien entity. The exploration fleet attacks the Else at Mars, with Descartes making some great moves in the Gade Laza, but not moves good enough to save his comrades from getting absorbed by living metal. Descartes tries to blow up a huge Else, but is swarmed and starts being taken over. Celestial Being shows up a bit too late to save the majority of the fleet, and Setsuna tries to save Descartes but fails, and is forced to watch as the Innovator is killed and absorbed. Setsuna activates the 00 Riser's Trans-Am in an effort to generate a field of expanded consciousness to talk to the Else, but is completely rebuked by the alien entity, and the 00 Riser starts to get absorbed as well. Tieria uses his quantum brain juice to remotely pilot the Sarah V Gundam, ripping the cockpit from the 00 Riser and throwing it to the other Meisters before the two old suits are completely engulfed in living metal. Lock-On and Alleluia use Trans-Am to quickly return to the Ptolemy, and Tieria decides to hold back the Else wave by using his Trans-Am to explode the Raphael Gundam like Vegeta. And now I'm sad because the purple Gundam is gone and we don't get enough purple mobile suits. The two fleeing Meisters are saved by the arrival of none other than Graham Aker himself and his Soul Bracer squad of GN flags. So yeah, it seems that being soundly beaten by Setsuna cured Graham of Char disease, and he's mostly back to his old self, commanding a crew of elite pilots. Do you ever think his squad members make fun of him about that phase where he wore a mask and called himself Mr. Bushido? I probably would. Tieria appears as a little Cortana hologram on the Ptolemy, and he tells Sumeragi that dying is really no biggie for him. Apparently, when Setsuna tried to open up a dialogue with the Else, he was overloaded with a shit ton of information all at once. It was so bad that he actually suffered brain damage, and it kinda sucks that he's in a coma now, because a pureblood innovator that could pilot the 00 Quanta Else the size of the moon emerges from Jupiter and starts heading towards the Earth. The Federation's response to this new giant Else is to set up a final defensive line, using the Celestial Being mothership as a forward operating base. Monachan is in command, and the Federation uses every fleet at its disposal to form a blockade around the Earth's sphere. It's a final stand if I've ever seen one, and a good setup for a phenomenal final battle. I think one of the strangest things about Trailblazer is how it has no real sense of time in its second half. The Else were supposed to take 3 months to get to Earth, and they do kind of try to establish the passing of time by showing people evacuating into shelters and Saji volunteering to be an engineer on the space elevator. But overall, it feels like all this happens over the course of a few days. When you consider that Setsuna goes into a coma for a few months instead of a day and a half, It makes his return later on more heroic, but the pacing just isn't there to make that moment feel big. Finally, the Ptolemy receives the 00 Quanta from the Celestial Being supply ship, and Tieria has Ian install a Veda terminal in the cockpit. He hopes that if Setsuna receives a large amount of information directly to the noggin again, he can use Veda to help parse all the data to take off some of the strain. The Else arrive at the defensive line while Setsuna is out cold, and the Federation throws everything they have at the strange metal aliens. Unfortunately, missiles and other conventional weapons aren't effective, and after the Else assimilate some mobile suits, they start to morph into copies of the mobile suits en masse, and this includes copying their weapons too. Unfortunately, while this battle is really huge and looks great, the problem with Trailblazer is that it feels a little hollow. Since the Else copy the Federation suits, we don't really get very many new designs, and I feel like the phrase extraterrestrial mobile suit is kind of wasted on metallic shapeshifters. What we got here is fine, and it works thematically with 00, I just kind of wish we got something a little weirder. You don't have to have Gundams fighting little green men, even though that could actually be really awesome. But what about giant space bugs like in Gunbuster? Maybe that's just the Starship Troopers fan inside me screaming out. While the Else are a little bit of squandered potential, I do really like the giant moon Else and the general eldritch horror vibe that it gives off. I just wish that design philosophy extended to the smaller aliens as well. Graham and his soul bracers show up on the battlefield along with the available Celestial Being Meisters, and Graham is shocked to see that the Else can even reform into copies of Federation ships. While all this has the makeup of a classic Gundam conflict of two huge forces of mobile suits clashing against each other, the fact that no one is piloting the suits and ships and they don't react to being destroyed does take away something from the show. While everyone is fighting and dying, Setsuna is undergoing a trial inside his own head, as he sees visions of the traumatic experiences of his life, culminating in a discussion with Lichty and Chris, and most importantly, Neil Delandy, the first Lock-On Stratos. Lock-On echoes his line to Setsuna about changing because he couldn't, and I think this is the moment where Setsuna finally understands the true meaning of that passing of the torch. Eventually, he sees the flower that Felt gave him in Season 2, and much like when he gained strength from that connection back then, he once again reaches out for it and awakens. Setsuna is ready to pilot the Quanta after waking up at Felt's side, and Tieria asks to be transferred to the suit's Veda terminal. Elena blurts out that she's in love with Tieria, even though he's like a disembodied consciousness that resides in the core of a supercomputer, and Ian responds in the most dadly way possible.
I love you very much!
What'd she just say?
Oh my, that's wonderful. Congrats on your new boyfriend.
Linda!
No daughter of mine's going to be dating a goddamn computer. Why does my Ian sound like Rick? With the arrival of Setsuna and the brand new 00 Quanta on the field, the Meisters now have a plan. Setsuna saves Patrick, Lock-On and Alleluia help to clear a way to the giant Else. Even Graham gets another moment to shine as he goes with his rival, and even though he's being absorbed by the aliens, slams into the surface of the Else and blows an opening for Setsuna. The Ptolemy is slowly being damaged beyond repair, but everyone on board decides to believe in Setsuna as he enters the core. Man, the core is so cool and alien looking, which is appropriate. He activates the mobile suit's quantum burst and almost can't handle the tide of data, even with Tieria and Veda's help. Setsuna can feel what the Else can feel, and he sees a faraway planet that slowly, over a millennia, becomes covered in the expanding alien metal. He sees the planet inevitably sucked into the expanding sun of its own solar system, and realizes that the Else are only expanding out into the galaxy to find a new home for their species. That and the Else really strive to try and understand everything that it comes into contact with, but it understands things by absorbing them, so when it comes into contact with other living matter, it kinda is no good. Setsuna decides to use the 00 Quanta to teleport to their home planet, in the hopes that he can use his innovator powers to create a new understanding between the two species. Well, it must work pretty fast because the Federation realizes that the Elves immediately stop fighting. They swirl and form together to create an enormous moon-sized flower that hangs in the Earth's orbit, an internal sign of cooperation and understanding between the two species. We cut to the year 2364, where the Earth Federation has completed the deep space exploration ship Sumeragi, and 40% of the species' population have become pureblood innovators. We see an older Princess Marina who receives a strange, shiny visitor to her small cabin. Even though she is old and blind, and his body has changed over the years, becoming an example of true cooperation, Marina knows that Setsuna has come back to her. He takes her hand, telling her that he now knows that she was right all along, and that he understands her as much as she understands him. Something that these two have been striving for since the very beginning of the series. We see the mobile suit overgrown with flowers, and the quote, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding." A poignant and pointed end to the 00 saga. And there we have it, 2 seasons and a movie. Gundam 00 began as an attempt to drag Gundam away from the World War II inspired stories of the early Universal century and into a more contemporary tale, one that still resonates to this day and beyond, for better or for worse. A series that has high-level animation and music, and while the story presented isn't perfect, well, I can't say it isn't incredibly entertaining the entire way through. I understand why there's a group of Gundam fans that don't really like this movie. It's weird, doesn't have much for half the characters to do, but at the end of the day, 00 still found a permanent place in my heart as a top-tier Gundam alternate universe. With the Anno Domini saga coming to a close, we look forward to our next project that is both incredibly popular and also very divisive. Next time on the Gundam Retrospective, we'll be taking a trip all the way back to the Universal Century to take a look at Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. Specifically the OVA version, because that seems to be the one that people say is the best. So grab a hold of your Psycho Frame, because that's what we'll be digging into next. After that, Magic Knight Rayearth is peeking its big 90s hair around the corner, and I have a few other videos that are currently being worked on as well. Thank you for watching today, and we will see you again very soon. Hey everyone, and welcome to today's end card. Let's start off with a gigantic thank you to all of my channel members, aka Batosai, Argan, Griever, Brian Sanchez, D. Mells, Daniel Johnson, Aggie Stank, Swanky Mank, Gert, Johnny G, Canto 20, McLean Nugent, Video Game Player 75, and Yo-Yo Mich. Always nice to see new faces on there. You guys are fucking amazing. Thank you very much for throwing me a couple of bucks every month. It certainly is very much appreciated. It keeps my caffeine habit going. I hope you guys enjoyed the ending to the Gundam 00 saga of videos. I'm pretty excited about May. I did a lot of work for upcoming stuff in April, and I only had one video that really came out in April, but it did really well. So May is looking to be a little bit more packed with content. I'm working on, obviously this video's out in May. We have the Magic Knight Rayearth video, which is in progress, 60s anime video, which is in progress. I have a video game review that is mech related in progress, and now I have to work on the Gundam Unicorn video. So we'll see if we can get that all squirted out. That was a bad choice of thing to way to describe. Anyway, we'll see if we can get that all done. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any suggestions for like what I should do for non-review videos, because I'm trying to get into like some more creative stuff, please leave them in a comment below. I do read all the comments, even though I don't always subscribe, because like I don't do a lot of social media stuff. It's not good for my mental health. So yeah, I read them. Even if you don't see me talk to you, I talk to you in my brain. Anyway, have a good day, guys, and hey, we'll see you next time.